Okay, I need you to stay with me here because what I'm about to walk you through is genuinely unprecedented in American history, and I don't use that word lightly. I've said it before about things that turned out to be significant but manageable. This is different. At 3:14 this morning Eastern Time, a courier departed the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory. The courier was carrying two sealed envelopes, one destined for the Speaker of the House, the other for the President pro tempore of the Senate. Inside those envelopes was identical documentation, a single page, signatures from the Vice President and a majority of the sitting cabinet. And that document stated, in the formal language required by the Constitution, that the President of the United States is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. If you're just joining us right now, hit subscribe immediately. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is constitutional machinery activating in real time, and you need to understand exactly what's happening. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment has been invoked for the first time ever. But here's the thing. Here's where this goes from constitutional procedure into genuine crisis. The president is not accepting it. The president is not stepping aside. The president is, according to multiple sources inside the White House, physically barricaded in the residence, directing Secret Service to prevent the vice president from entering the grounds, and publicly declaring that what has happened is not a constitutional action, but an unlawful coup against a sitting president. Which means right now, at this moment, the United States of America has two people claiming to be commander-in-chief, two people issuing orders, two people asserting the authority of the presidency. And caught directly in the middle of that contradiction is the entire apparatus of American government, starting with the people who control the nuclear arsenal. All right. Before we go any further, we need to establish exactly what Section 4 of the 25th Amendment actually says and does, because there's a lot of confusion about this, and the confusion matters. The confusion is part of what's creating the crisis. Most people, when they think about the 25th Amendment, they think about presidential succession. The president dies, the vice president takes over. That's Section 1. Simple, clear, we've used it. Section 4 is something else entirely. Section 4 was written for a scenario that the framers of this amendment hoped would never actually occur. It was designed for the moment when a president is alive, is conscious, is asserting his authority, but the people closest to him, the vice president and the cabinet, have concluded that he cannot or should not continue to wield presidential power. Maybe he's had a stroke and can't communicate. Maybe he's undergone surgery and is incapacitated. Or, and this is the difficult part, maybe those around him have determined that his judgment has become so compromised, so dangerous, that the republic itself is at risk. Under Section 4, the vice president and a majority of cabinet members, that's 8 signatures, can transmit a written declaration to Congress stating that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. The moment, the instant, that declaration is received by congressional leadership, presidential power transfers to the vice president, not after a vote, not after a hearing, not after judicial review. Immediately, like flipping a circuit breaker. That transfer occurred at 3:14 a.m. this morning. Constitutionally, legally, the vice president became acting president at that moment. But the Constitution also gives the president a countermove. If the president transmits his own written declaration to Congress asserting that he is able to serve, his powers are restored. Unless within 4 days, the vice president and cabinet send a second declaration disputing that claim. If they do, the whole thing goes to Congress for resolution. We are in the initial phase of this. The declaration has been delivered. The president has not yet submitted his counter-declaration. But sources say that letter is being drafted right now. Here's some history that matters. In October 1919, President Woodrow Wilson suffered a massive stroke. He was partially paralyzed, his speech was impaired, his cognitive function was significantly diminished. And for the remaining 17 months of his presidency, the American people were essentially lied to about the condition of their president. Wilson's wife, Edith Wilson, controlled access to him completely. She decided which documents reached him. She filtered which advisors could see him. She effectively made decisions on his behalf while maintaining the fiction that he was governing. When the truth eventually emerged, it horrified lawmakers. The idea that the presidency could be held hostage by a medical crisis, that there was no constitutional mechanism to address a president who was alive but incapable, became a genuine concern. That concern intensified after President Kennedy's assassination. What if Kennedy had survived Dallas but been left in a persistent vegetative state? What if a president suffered a heart attack during a nuclear crisis and couldn't communicate, but also couldn't be replaced? The 25th Amendment was ratified in 1967 specifically to address those scenarios. It was meant to ensure continuity of government. It was meant to ensure that the country would never be left without a functioning chief executive. But here's what the framers of that amendment assumed. They assumed good faith. They assumed that if the cabinet took the extraordinary step of declaring a president unable to serve, the president would recognize the gravity of the situation and cooperate with the constitutional process. They did not anticipate this. They did not anticipate a president who would look at the Constitution and declare that it doesn't apply to him. Smash that like button right now if you understand the stakes of what we're witnessing. This engagement matters. It determines whether this information reaches people who need to see it. Let me tell you what we're hearing from inside the White House right now. Multiple sources are describing a building in complete disarray. Staff members are openly weeping in hallways. Some are packing boxes. Others are feeding documents into shredders. The chief of staff, who reportedly refused to sign the Section 4 declaration, is now running a communications operation aimed at framing this entire event as an illegal seizure of power. Simultaneously, other aides are drafting executive orders designed to terminate every cabinet member who signed the declaration. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, the President wants them gone. And this creates a constitutional paradox that legal scholars have never had to resolve in practice. If the cabinet signed the declaration first, and presidential power transferred at the moment of delivery, can the president then fire those cabinet members? Do their signatures still count if they've been terminated? Or did they stop being his subordinates the instant that letter reached Capitol Hill? There is no precedent for this. There is no clear answer. The Constitution doesn't address it because the framers assumed no one would ever try to test it this way. What we have right now is a government existing in two contradictory states simultaneously. We have two command structures, two chains of authority, two people issuing orders that cannot both be legal. And nowhere is that contradiction more dangerous than in the realm of nuclear weapons. Stay with me here because this is where it gets genuine.